We have a pretty eventful week right at the moment. In the next few trading days, we have earnings coming out on June 24th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, an hour and a half after the trading bell. Then we have the day prior, we have Annual General Meeting 2021 on June 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as well. In this video, I'm going to explain in basic terms of what to expect, what to anticipate for this earnings, what kind of surprises we could potentially see, and if we do, what kind of run-up we'll see overall. What levels will we meet in terms of resistance, like how high the stock will go, because that resistance level either will knock us down or hopefully will consolidate at that level. I'm going to explain all that in this video. Hopefully you enjoy it, hopefully you like it, hopefully you find it helpful. And also, quick disclaimer before I continue, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a professional. Everything I do share with you is just my opinion. It is not advice, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. Now, if you go to BlackBerry Investors Relations website and scroll down to the financial reports, go to transcripts, click on Q4, which was the last earnings we just had. I already had it pulled up. Now, looking at the transcript for the last earnings, they mentioned that growth for both cybersecurity and BTS, which is just QNX and IV System together and all that stuff, for the fiscal year 2022, which is the fiscal year we're in right now, 2022, GAAP revenue is going to be coming in the range of $675 million to $715 million as an estimate for the year, right? This is what BlackBerry stated. Now, this is on the low side, but that's because it does not include the patent revenue licensing. It could include a small portion, just like the last earnings, but the ballpark of the majority of the patent revenue licensing earnings is around $250 million, and that's not included here. So if you take $715 million and add $250 million, you're at $965 million, which is kind of close to $1 billion. And that is important because usually they were around the ballpark of almost $1 billion, sometimes above $1 billion in terms of revenue year over year. Now, the thing is, though, that this is where the surprise comes in. If they mentioned that the patent sale, because that's the reason why they did not include patent revenue licensing, by the way, because they're anticipating to sell the patents. And based off what the CEO mentioned, he said that, or like in terms of BlackBerry overall mentioned, they said they expect it to come up in the next earnings or most likely in the next two earnings. So right now we're in the next earnings, which is the first one. And then I think most likely it's going to come up in the next earnings. So not necessarily the next few trading days, but the next earnings overall. That's when I'm expecting the patent sale to come through. But the surprise is if it does come through this earnings, I'm expecting the stock at least to have a minimum $3 jump. The reason why is for the following two reasons. So if you remember in the past, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years, BlackBerry sued Qualcomm, and they won in terms of the settlement $850 million or $840 million or $860 million, somewhere around there, and the stock jumped about $2 to $3 per share. I think it was a little bit in between $2 to $3, and it was pretty good. But with this patent sale, given how much patents are being sold from what I've been reading and how much they're technically worth, I think it'll be minimum in the $1 billion ballpark in terms of how much the patents will be sold for. And if it's $1 billion, I'm anticipating at least a minimum $3 run-up, minimum. Again, this is just my opinion. It's not guaranteed. But then the second reason is Chen does not fluff up anything from, like, I've been following this stock for a long time. Every time this guy talks, it's just like which is good because technically you don't want to fluff up things. And when the stock runs up, it's actually going to run up and it's going to be fine. But because he doesn't fluff up things, and what he stated in the last earnings, he stated that shareholders are going to like the amount that the stocks are, like, not necessarily those exact words, but he said shareholders will be happy with the patents sold price kind of stuff. I'm wording it incorrectly, but he basically he like hyped it up for like in terms of Chen style, which he does not hype up anything. So given that, I think it's going to be a minimum $1 billion patent sale, if not more, but at least in the safe side, a $1 billion patent sale, which is a $3 jump for this stock, which is pretty awesome overall. So that's technically the surprises. Now, another surprise could happen, which this is going to explain in terms of revenues being beat. So even if they beat, so let's just say right now $715 million for the fiscal year comes in, which per quarter, if you divide $715 million on the high side, by the way, divided by 4, which gives you each quarter, is $178.25 million per year, if my math is correct. And if it's, or per quarter, sorry about that, $178.25 million per quarter. If you look at estimates for this earnings coming up, analysts are expecting on average, it's going to be $171.25 million on the average side. In the low side, 169 million. I usually disregard this because nobody really cares about the low side. And then the high side, they're expecting 176 million. Now, what they need to beat is this to technically beat the street estimates, but beating this is even better, obviously, right? Now, these are all lower than the 178.25 million, which is in correlation of what BlackBerry estimates for the year. The reason why I'm expecting a beat for the earnings is because 178 million per quarter is relatively low. So if you go back to last earnings and go to earnings press release for Q4, which was last earnings, you could see even when this did not include, because this earnings, the last one, did not include patent revenue licensing. And even when it did not include it, and I know it included a little bit because I know some people are going to be like, it includes a little bit, but it did not include majority of it. And it was at 210 million for the quarter. GAAP revenue, by the way, because BlackBerry gave a GAAP revenue estimate. So it was actually pretty good, and it beat expectations because, or like not beat expectations, but it would indicate that it would be pretty like a pretty decent revenue quarter potentially coming up. Now I know BlackBerry estimated it themselves; it's going to be 750 million, so it's not a guarantee beat that's going to happen. But I think they gave a low estimate so that way they could beat it. But I'm going to explain why that does not equate to a massive run up, and I'm going to explain further soon. But I want to show a couple more. So 2 more I'm going to show. So Q1, because right now the earnings coming up is Q1 earnings. I only showed Q4 just to show the patent sale revenue to be removed from it, because these two are going to include the patent sale revenues, patent revenue licensing. So here's Q1. So exactly a year ago, if you look at GAAP revenue, it was 206 million. Now, mind you, this is during the pandemic as well, but debatable in terms of is this really in the cycle of the pandemic or is it not? And then also this includes patent revenue licensing. So it's 206 million, includes it. Now this one, I would say this is really in the mix of in terms of the the pandemic. So this is 247 million in terms of GAAP revenue, and this also includes patent sale revenue. So from what I've pulled up in terms of like Q1 and all that stuff in earnings, usually on the ballpark, it doesn't really fall lower than 180 million. And if that's the case, I'm expecting a beat for earnings, which is awesome. The only problem is this does not warrant a massive run up, unfortunately. The reason why is they even stated here. So this represents a growth, by the way, this estimate right here represents a growth rate between 9 to 15% from fiscal year 2021. The thing is though, this is like the market average of growth. It's nothing surprising. It's nothing great. What the analysts want to see is 50% year-over-year growth or 100% year-over-year growth. If it was 100% year-over-year growth, this stock will fly. The unfortunate part, that's not going to happen yet, and I'm going to explain when you can anticipate to happen. I'm going to explain the resistance levels soon for the stock, by the way, but I just want to go through this because this is quite important. But before I go through the other things, when you can expect it also, what you need to see is, because given the average, so because BlackBerry's revenue, by the way, if you include patent revenue, licensing, sales, and all that stuff, it's around roughly about a 1 billion per year revenue. If you take 1 billion divided by 4, that's about 250 million per year. What you need to do is, or what BlackBerry needs to do, is their revenue needs to come in for the estimate. So like, let's just say right now, their estimate was at, I'm just going to pull up right now. So let's just say Q4. If their estimate right here was 300 million or above 300 million, so 310 million, then the stock will have a nice run up. But being at 200, 250, 260 million, yeah, those are great. It actually might do pretty well this earnings if it was at 260 million for GAAP revenue. The problem is it won't do anything until it's, in my opinion, at least gets to 300 million revenue for the quarter. That's what I would expect in terms of a massive beat and a nice run up. The only thing is though, the question is, when will that happen? So if you go back to the transcript of the last earnings, this goes more in-depth dive of the Ivy system and BlackBerry Spark in terms of when the revenues will start to kick in full throttle. And the reason why these are important, and I go through these, is these are the bigger chunks of the revenue for the future for BlackBerry, in my opinion. And for the Ivy system, if you haven't seen my videos in the past, one of them is going to pop up here and explain it further. And also for BlackBerry Spark, you could just think of it as a CrowdStrike competitor in terms of the company called CrowdStrike. So these are two massive revenue generating machines for BlackBerry in the future. And they explain how they see other competitors, but they're not competitors. They're more partner opportunities, because Ivy includes hardware, operating system, and cloud agnostics. All these other companies are not doing all of them. They're just doing a small portion here and there. And then also a third-party company calculated that monetizing car data in terms of the market for it is in the region of 450 billion to 750 billion per year by 2030. And BlackBerry recognizes that this market is going to be competitive, but they feel very well positioned while we're already working with OEMs in October. So this is the thing. So in October, they're expecting that to release the early access version of Ivy. Now, in my opinion, I don't think the revenue is going to be even existent in this situation, but in October 2021, they're expecting to release an early access version of Ivy. And then also they expect to start shipping the product in February of next year. So 2022, February, they're going to start shipping it. By March, or the end of March or first week of April, that's when the quarterly report earnings comes out in 2022. And that will reflect this a little bit. The only thing is though, it's just getting started. So in terms of Ivy, when will the revenue start coming in, technically full throttle? I would say probably a full year after that, but you could start seeing some revenue coming in. That doesn't mean the stock won't be running up, because this is, I think, the pretty good news. So now moving on to Spark. So BlackBerry Spark, again, competitor of CrowdStrike and all that stuff. As a reminder, we launched our new Spark suite in May and the cybersecurity in October. Pipeline for our Spark suite grew strongly sequentially. The typical sales cycle is around 9 months, so we're expecting a good second half to fiscal 2022. So in terms of the call and all that stuff, what they were talking, they stated that basically by December earnings, it will be reflected BlackBerry Spark in the first beginning portions where it starts kicking in a decent amount where it's noticeable, and then the earnings after that. So again, like I mentioned, in end of March or beginning of April of 2022, that's when you'll see a good chunk of BlackBerry Spark revenue coming in. So essentially, if you're looking for the cycle is this earnings might just be okay, but if the patent sale comes in, it's just like it's going to go crazy in terms of the stock, in my opinion. But I'm not anticipating. I'm expecting like a decent beat, like probably it's going to come in the ballpark of 89 million something for this earnings. It might hit 200 million, but I think it's probably going to be 189 million, somewhere around there, which will be a beat for revenue, but it's not going to be year over year beat. That's another issue. So even if they beat estimates of 189 million, right, because they're expected 178 million, whatever the earnings right here, so 176 million by the street, average 171. Even if they hit 178 million, it doesn't mean anything, because year over year it's a decline, because they had 210 million right here. And given the analysts, they're probably going to compare it to the non-GAAP revenue. So there's that, right? So 215 million. So if you wanted a good revenue beat, you would have to pass 215 million to satisfy everybody, hypothetically. So there's that first portion. Now, again, like I mentioned, if the patent sale comes through, it could go crazy. But I'm not anticipating that this earnings. Then the next earnings, it's probably going to be around the same ballpark. It might increase more, around like basically low 200 million per quarter kind of stuff, maybe under that. Again, hopefully it beats it, but which is going to be coming out in September for the earnings, if I'm not mistaken, or October. I can't remember right now. Disregard what I'm saying in terms of the timing, but patent sale should be coming around that time frame. So that's what I'm anticipating. So during that time, that should be good, and the stock should jump up during that time. Now, after that, in terms of December, so that's when the next earnings comes out in December, that's when BlackBerry Spark will start showing some revenue growth, and I think BlackBerry will be well positioned. And then after that, the March, April earnings of 2022, that's when we're going full throttle. So we still got time to grow, still time to get into the stock overall, but it's just like, it all depends on how fast they move. The only problem is the patent sale is kind of slowing things down. That's the unfortunate part, but still in good shape overall. Now, in terms of the run up, because if it runs up, what can we expect in terms of the prices? And I'm going to go more in depth in another video, hopefully posted right after this. But in general sense, right now we had an upward trend support line and unfortunately broke it, but we're like pretty much hovering underneath it right now. Hopefully bounce back up. There's going to be some turbulence, but the thing is though, in terms of the run up, what we're looking at. So right now we're at $12.80, closed that. After hours is 12.68. This is June 21, 2021. And if we were to run up, we're going to have issues around the $16 price point. I think we'll pass it if the patent sale does come through, by the way. But $16 price point, $16.30, $16.50. Then we have around $17.30, $17.50. And I think $17.80 as well. Then $18.30, $18.50. But ultimately, we're going to have issues passing this. So this is what I'm anticipating. So this downward trend resistance line right here that dates back since January 2021, and then right here in June 2021, June 3rd, 2021, I think we're going to have issues passing pretty much, 1760 right here. So that 1730 to 1750 is going to cause us issues. Then the 1780 round ballpark, depending on when we meet here, 1760, I guess. Then 1830 to 1850, the low $18 price point in general. And then once we pass that, just getting past that $20 barrier, it's going to cause an issue. So the only way we'd pass all these, by the way, is if we have the patent sale somehow, which I'm not anticipating this earnings, but if there's a chance it could come through, it could. But if it comes through, plus revenue beat, it would break through the $20 price point and all that stuff. So we could start going back up again and technically going back to flying up again. But not necessarily anticipating that, and it's going to take a lot of momentum to do that, because if you see my next video, I'm going to explain about, for example, the 1 year MACD line, very important right here. So I'm going to explain that in the next video. But this is just for the earnings right now. I just want to talk about this stuff right here. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you found it helpful. And then one more other thing too, is they also said across Spark, they started to see strength in both renewals and upsells in our key verticals. So they basically shared some names and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And they also see we continue to have success in upgrading our UEM installed base to Spark. So they're seeing good turnovers and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. It's good growth for BlackBerry Spark. So all good stuff, and hopefully that equates to good revenue growth for this quarter and the next quarters to follow. But yeah, that's basically it for the video. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you found it helpful. Hope you liked it. If you did, consider dropping a like. It does help out the channel. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. I'll try and answer them as soon as possible. Apologize for the delay. It's just been extremely busy with work and all that stuff. So I'll try to keep up with them as fast as possible. And if you like videos like this or other stock videos or other financial videos, consider subscribing. It does help with the channel as well. So thank you so much for that. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again. Peace.